The Seattle Kraken trade rumors continue, but it's not just Jared McCann, apparently a part of the conversations.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're bringing you your favorite team. That's the Seattle Kraken, I'm assuming, every single day. Erica Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, also an accredited media member for Milano Cortina. Extremely excited about that. And we're going to be talking some CBA later. And I'll talk, of course, about some of the things that stood out to me, including the Olympics, not guaranteed, but we'll talk about that. There's another piece I find really interesting, and I'm going to talk about the CBA on this episode because I am deep into reporting on the CBA for the WNBA, so I thought it'd be great to re-up on this. But we're going to start with trade rumors. We're also going to talk about top prospects on yesterday's episode, and apologies to our YouTube watchers, viewers. Something went wrong with scheduling that episode, so I went up several hours later than the audio. But we love you, audio listeners. We love you, video watchers and viewers, YouTube watchers, viewers. And thanks again for making us your daily destination. First listen of the day, midday, late night, whatever it is. Thank you so much for tapping in. So, trade rumors. We've been talking about Jared McCann. I feel like, for a while. I saw another report saying that perhaps the Buffalo Sabres are interested, but here's the question. What are the Kraken looking to get? That's the big question. Do we need more assets? Do we need more salary cap money? Do we need more prospects? We're going to talk about prospects in the next segment. So, spoiler alert, I'm probably leaning towards no there. So what's going to sweeten the pot? And again, based on yesterday's episode, what is realistic as far as improvement and gains that will be useful and fruitful for the Seattle Kraken, not just in making a playoff push, perhaps this season. I don't think it's going to be this season, but for seasons to come. And I think we're in the messy middle. I'm saying that as someone who is trying to grow her hair out from a very short cut for several years now. The messy middle, I feel like I've talked about this before. The messy middle is not fun. It doesn't always look great, doesn't always feel great. And so you can wane on your decision to kind of go for longer, hopefully sustainable glory as opposed to immediate just the immediate gains and wins. So maybe we're in the messy middle. Maybe the Seattle Kraken, hopefully, the Seattle Kraken are in a place where, like me, they're trying to go from a super clean precision cut to maybe some shoulder length action, and have it not look and feel crazy. I don't know. I'm making this too personal. The point is, we talked about this on yesterday's episode. Yes, you can say things like the penalty kill in theory should be better. We can say things like, net front presence, including on the defensive side of things, in theory should be better. But we've been saying that for for the entire existence of the Seattle Kraken. So what's it going to take for something to stick? But speaking of these trade rumors, this I found a really interesting article because in addition to McCann, we've been hearing Jaden Schwartz, his name. We've been hearing Jamie Alexiak, his name, for the better half of a year and a half now. But one player added to these trade rumor lists, Mason Marchment. This man hasn't even played a game for the Seattle Kraken, and people are already perhaps attributing him to an exit. Now, what's funny is that we've already seen a player that we've acquired effectively leave on waivers, so maybe they're on to something. But Mason is supposed to be one of those guys that makes us a little more gritty, gives us a little more sandpaper. Ooh. Sorry, all my allergies are really acting up this week. Anyway, so I don't know, but this is the hockey news talking about how he was an acquisition. Um, Marchment inflicts damage with his 6'5", 212-pound frame and entering the final season of a $4.5 million cap hit. The Kraken could retain some of his salary and acquire another draft pick if they elect to flip him. Marchment, could quite easily eclipse his career highs with Seattle. He's expected to play a larger role than what he was playing in Dallas. So that's the back end of this trade rumor article here. But again, do we need picks? Unless it's going to be the number one pick, which I think some people are trying to get me to gear up to think about Team Tank this season. It's kind of looking like the organization is okay with that, potentially. Not full on tank. I don't know. I'm very puzzled. I'm very perplexed about what's happening here. Mason Marchment, I mean, maybe. I guess we'll see. Or I just don't know. I don't know what value we get back other than picks. But can we turn those picks, if we have a surplus of picks, right? Then that's when you can maybe start talking about a bigger acquisition. Maybe. There's a lot of questions. I have so many questions. All right, Jaden Schwartz entering a final season of his contract, 33 years old, not the fastest, but still one of the smartest. I love that line in this article, which is why it's hard to move on from a guy like that. But talks about how he works well with his line mates, give and goes, takes advantage of free space. Love that. So they say he might not get as much as Marner, but could fetch a strong return. I mean, I get it. I get why you think about moving him. Again, what is the value added here? Can you get some good picks that you then flip somewhere else? I just think that with the way the Seattle Kraken are moving, which is a glacial pace at best, I think you still need guys like Schwartz, arguably Jamie Alexiak as well, who again is also on this list, but I don't know. I said this in, I think, to a YouTube comment the other day with regard to it. Maybe it was Schwartz, but like talking about Schwartz, Larson, Eberle, kind of that whole contingency, done maybe for some people. Until we know exactly what the plan is and we're ready to blow things up or have it be, a complete youth movement, until we know that for sure, I don't see why you need to get rid of some of these OGs. Not only because their leadership, I mean, the team has struggled, but in my estimation, not because of some of these guys. You know what I'm saying? Jaden, I like how Jaden plays. I like how Ebbs plays. Jamie is probably one I'm okay with, maybe moving on from sooner than some of the other guys, but still think his game, until you have someone that can put up the consistent numbers defensively that he does, that Larson does, what are we doing? What are we looking to do? I don't know. But I guess we'll find out here. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Do you think there are more moves to make for the Seattle Kraken team? I know some of you have commented that you think it's probably more of a deadline or somewhere between now and deadline, which I think makes sense as well for some of these guys. McCann probably. But let me know what you think. Are the Seattle Kraken done this offseason, this free agency period? Kind of feels that way to me. I think they're probably open to conversation, but they don't seem pressed to make a move. I don't know. Those are just the vibes that I'm getting, though. I guess we'll see. Coming up next, though, let's talk about some prospects. Top 100 prospects per The Athletic. how many Seattle Kraken prospects are listed. We'll get into that coming up on today's episode. Today's episode of the Locked On Kraken podcast brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. WNBA All-Star. Oof, I was on the overnight shifts for CBS when Caitlin Clark appeared to injure herself again. We'll have to see. I'm sure that's going to change the FanDuel odds when it comes to literally everything, MVP, finals, things like that. She just hasn't been healthy. But whether you're about WNBA, baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action by watching, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. But if you were a good friend, you would tell them to make sure they have protection from the sun. Either way, like I mentioned, FanDuel has WNBA odds. It's not PWHL season, but they've partnered with FanDuel, so you can see PWHL odds, NCAA odds. The future bets is what I like to look at. Maybe some of our prospects that we're going to talk about next will be on those future bets in the future. But we'll have to see. But you can find all of that at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit fanduel.com to get started. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, host of Locked On Kraken. Talked a little bit about trade rumors. McCann, Alexiak, Schwartz, Marchment? Question mark. I don't know. That one seems that would be a little tough. A little hard, a little rough, but who knows? But my biggest question is kind of what is the end game here? Are we done in free agency? Are we done with offseason moves? I'm getting the vibe that maybe yes, but we'll see. We still have to figure out what's happening with Capo Caco. We still have to figure out what's happening with Riker Evans. But let's talk about some prospects. So The Athletic loves their lists. They are all about lists. And they have an article, Top 100 Drafted NHL Prospects Ranking. So this is a combo, a few so this is coming from Scott Wheeler. This is his summer 2025 list. And the cool thing about the list is that you can actually sort it to look at a specific team. So I've gone ahead and done that. Sorted the list of top 100 NHL prospects, drafted prospects, to see how many are affiliated with the Seattle Kraken. There's multiple different tiers, so that's one thing you should know. The Seattle Kraken have representation in Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 5, and Tier 5. So Tier 2 at number 10 overall, Berkeley Catton. So, fourth leading scorer in his draft year in the WHL. Registered 54 goals and 120 points in a combined 72 regular season and playoff games on a Spokane team that lost more games than it won. Has a real pedigree even before his draft season too, as a number one into the WHL, who had an offensive catalyst on a bad Chiefs team in his rookie season, and who also led Canada Red to silver as captain at World's Under-17 Hockey Challenge. He's dangerous whenever he's on the puck and shines with his knifing, slippery game. So this guy can skate. I love that. Multi-dimensional skills, ability to play with both speed on the rush, smooth, fast, nimble, high-end skater, and more slowly inside the offensive zone when the pace ramps down. Can spin away from pressure. I love body shielding. I love being able to use your quickness to get out of situations. Catton has that. Uh, Gets to the guts of the ice, also makes plays out wide, thrives in tight spaces and cutbacks. Again, he can skate. So, is he going to be on an NHL roster? We've broken that down before. I think there's a really good chance. I think there's a really good chance. And I think this roster construction is kind of making it so that he has more than just every opportunity to make the team, but he has a real shot at being able to contribute to the team because that kind of has to happen. I don't think it benefits Berkeley Catton to be anywhere but the NHL at this point. It's kind of how it feels. All right. So that was our tier 2 Berkeley Catton at number 10 on this top 100. At 20 in tier 3, Jake O'Brien, the fisherman. Now, he's described in this, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he's described here in a few different ways as snake bitten, quiet tournaments, such as, you know, the Holinka tournament last year, injuries we've talked about, but overall he's described as a finesse player, tons of feel, skill, poise, and craftsmanship on the puck. And as a passer, so he gets high marks there. Quote, he seems to know where guys are even when they're in his blind spot. The IQ and passing ability are high-end tools, high-end ability to put pucks into spaces before his line mates, but also himself. This is speaking IQ, poise, anticipation, some of that communication that isn't verbal. And those are important things that I do think open up creativity offensively in particular, and the Seattle Kraken definitely need some of that. He's, quote, viewed as a competitive enough center, though he supports play well off the puck. I'd like to see him involve himself more in the fight. He lacks a physical element. Well, so does the Seattle Kraken. So in one way, he fits the prototype. But is that where the Seattle Kraken game is going or where it should go? He might have to figure some of that out. Athleticism is there. Muscle should come. So again, we've talked about this even before he was officially with the Kraken. That's going to be something huge that stands out to me right away. But we've seen Shane Wright lean into that. And I think actually he's been putting on more body mass, comparative, to what they were starting out with. I think he's been able to maintain a higher weight. Shane Wright better than Matty Beniers, who seems to really struggle putting on weight. If only that were my problem. But skill, sense, IQ, and ability makes plays at different paces. So something we also heard from Berkeley Catton, which seems to be important on Wheeler's list. Coming in at number 82, Carson Reinkampf, toolsy, rangy forward. What? Toolsy and rangy. It's okay. Good straight line speed, ability to make plays in direct attacking sequences. Has impressed with what they consider depth roles with some of his Hockey Canada teams. Will likely, wrote ahead of the draft that while he scored 30 goals in his draft year, he might just be scratching the surface. So that's good. Dangerous shooter straight up. Talk a lot about his release here, and play off the puck isn't his calling card. He's better though than he gets credit for. So someone really skilled. What was it? Toolsy and rangy. That's fantastic. Very capable, forechecker. Does need to tighten up with the puck at times. He can be careless. Don't like reading that. Some natural tools, and now it's about building use cases for them so that he can apply them and get the most out of them at the NHL level. So, not as confident as some of the others that we've heard, but this is a 100 list. He's coming in at 82. And at 98, just making the cut, Jagger Firkus. And, I think I'm very curious if we get to see Firkus a little bit. Firkus is one of those little guys who just always seems to be around it and showing talent when he is. So he's into the hockey. He's committed. Not an explosive skater, but he works and is quick and nimble. Plus, he does have straight line acceleration. 5'11", 163. So, on the smaller side. At times, people have said they want to see him play quicker against better competition. People do think, though, that he might be kind of a guy that sticks around the AHL more than he has time with the NHL, and maybe not a full-time NHLer. But don't be surprised, this says, if he becomes a top 9 winger with some skill and quick strike ability with the right patience and coach. Do the Seattle Kraken have patience right now? We have a new coach. Is it the right coach? Very interesting. Not every player in the NHL has to fit the same mold. Sometimes you need an opportunistic little water bug like Firkus. Ooh, is that Wheeler's way of saying he's got sandpaper? I think I'll take it. I'll always hedge my bets on sandpaper. So very curious to see what Firkus can do. But again, Firkus at 98, Reinkampf at 82, Jake O'Brien from this year's draft class at 20, Berkeley Catton, our best prospect per Scott Wheeler, and 10th best prospect drafted per Wheeler and his most recent list for The Athletic. I think that when we start to see the Seattle Kraken prospects comparative to some other prospects, like I didn't look at all of the prospects for all of the teams, but I'd be curious to see if there's a team that really stands out and has more, or the teams perhaps that have more players on that 100 list. It's just one person's list, but it's always interesting to use as a barometer in what some folks who focus on prospects, what folks who focus on kind of rankings and things of that nature are saying about the Seattle Kraken. Do they always get it right? Probably not. None of us ever do 100% of the time, but I think it's always interesting to listen to those, or read, in this case, those conversations. I think the Seattle Kraken have to figure some things out here, because while our prospect pool is still pretty solid, I've said this before, but there are a lot of other teams that have been properly in team tank, and you got to think some of those top prospects or early picks in the first round are going to pay off eventually. And when that happens, where are the Seattle Kraken going to be, just with regard to the Pacific Division, let alone the league overall? I've been saying this for years, and I think we're actually starting to see it happen. So, I know in the first segment, I was like, do we really need more picks? And now maybe I'm like, maybe we do. Maybe we need to re-up. You get those picks. It just gives you that flexibility if and when maybe one prospect, it's not that they're not a good player, but maybe they're not the right fit. And maybe that's something that you can parlay into something that is about getting the right people in the Seattle Kraken system. But I don't know. What's Jason, JB, and company? What do they have cooking? I'm very eager. I'm the eager house guest that keeps peeking into the kitchen, commenting on all the smells, sights, and sounds to try and get a hint at what's for dinner, because that's what's going on here. I want to know what's for dinner when it comes to the Seattle Kraken. Coming up, I want to talk about a very specific part of the collective bargaining agreement, and it has to do with expansion fees. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode. This episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored job posts or Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been there where you think you have the right fit, and it turns out, no, not really. You got to go back to the drawing board, and it can be tough because you put in a lot of energy when it comes to trying to find the right fit when you're doing it for your own business, because it can make or break what you're trying to do. But that's where you want to lean on something like Indeed, because you can now speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, folks. So as those who listen every day will know, someone brought it to my attention that the new collective bargaining agreement includes an expanded 84-game schedule. Now, some of these things, not surprising, things that we've been talking about, but some of these things I found really interesting, including the playoff fund. So there's a pool of money, which this is really interesting to me, divided at the discretion of each locker room's leadership group. That's so interesting to me. I cover other leagues, other sports where it's divvied out either completely equitably or it's prorated by your contract. So someone who came in on a contract because someone was waived or let go, like in the WNBA, when there's bonus money, that is prorated, and kind of figured out versus how many wins specifically you helped contribute. That's more of thinking about the in-season tournament, the Commissioner's Cup, but at the discretion of each locker room's leadership group, I don't know. I kind of want to know how much money I'm making. But The Athletic, I guess, asked players, some anonymously, about the new collective bargaining agreement, and someone with regard to the playoff fund. An increased playoff fund is a massive win for the players. Guys mentioned when they went the distance, they generally weren't bringing home much money relative to all the work they did and the expenses playoffs can cost for family and friends going to the games. So some people call this part of the new CBA the massive win. They also say it's only appropriate that the rising revenues and salary cap saw an increase in the player fund. Completely agree there. The total fund will receive $34 million in 26-27, and will increase by $2 million each year of the new CBA, which is, I believe this is a 4-year CBA, which is also something they changed. And they changed the term of the CBA to more closely match the tenure of maybe your average NHLer, which I thought was also really interesting, because in other CBAs that I've discussed, other leagues that I cover, sometimes you'll see that averages are actually, or I should say, terms for certain accoutrement terms for certain things to be active in the CBA actually fall out of what is considered the average tenure window. So you almost have to be You have to have more than the average term of service in some CBAs that I've discussed to even tap into some of the benefits. So to see the NHL go the other way, where they're shortening term to more closely reflect, I think is kind of cool. Another athlete, going back to this playoff pool, I never think about pay in the playoffs. More money is always better, but when you're in the playoffs, you don't think about money. Maybe we should. Yeah, maybe they should. Now, this is interesting. Sharing expansion fees, because this is what I found wild. Some of this we know. Vegas Golden Knights expansion fee was $500 million in 2017. Seattle paid $650 million in 2021. A recent Sportico report indicated future expansion fees could reach $2 billion. And the way the math breaks down per this article is that is $62.5 million for each of the current 32 owners. None of that money, though, goes to the players. None of the expansion fee money goes to the players. And this is something, again, in other leagues that I cover, but mostly thinking about the collective bargaining agreement negotiations that are happening right now in the WNBA. This is wild to me because the WNBA is expanding. They're like, Oprah, you get an expansion, you get an expansion, you get an expansion. And these expansion fees that are being reported are massive and keep increasing. But how that money trickles down, or if it does at all, what the financial integrity of the league is, to where those expansion fees are not just kind of paying backdated bills, but are they helping the league grow and progress to the point that it can sustain expansion? I mean, those are massive questions that I think players associations need to ask. And apparently this was the topic where NHL owners, quote, put their heels down on not moving from their current position with this. So they don't want to share, owners do not want to share expansion fees with the player pool. I think we got to put an asterisk around that one, because if the owners are saying heck no, yeah, I don't think that's going to fly over too well with the players. So one player from a Stanley Cup winning team, or who has won a Stanley Cup in their career, doesn't necessarily mean it's someone from Florida, but they could be. The owners made big money last time. Next time, players should too. And effectively, the quote's kind of janky, but, it does seem like what they're trying to say here is that, fans don't go to watch owners play on expansion teams. They go to watch the players. So why wouldn't the players get a cut and have some of that money reallocated directly to player initiatives? And I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. And again, I think it's going to be something that we'll see also in the WNBA kind of take on its own, its own life. Whether that happens in this CBA, looking like probably not, but for the NHL and for the WNBA, for the sake of the players in those leagues and the Players Association, yeah, I think having a conversation about how expansion fees are going to directly and indirectly support players is important. Or are we just covering, again, bills, which are still important, but those are different things. Those are very different allocations. Anyway, I like to nerd out about CBAs, so I just wanted to spend some time with that, because some of the things that I was reading about the NHL, or have been reading about the NHL, are mirroring things and conversations that I'm also seeing in the WNBA. That's our show. Thanks as always for tuning in. A reminder to be kind to yourself, be kind to others when you can tolerate it and stomach it. Hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud we say always, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.